When life gets confusing and news of the day overwhelming, when you shake your head in dismay, watching scenes of yet another attack on innocent lives, or listening to our political leaders lie to us and slander each other and kind of scare us into those voting booths this week, when you see the face of that little Amal Hussein, the 7-year-old daughter of God dying from starvation in war-torn Yemen, where food is not scarce, but the moral integrity of leaders and nations is completely barren. When you read, in the Post on the second or third page of another murder out in Pahokee or Belle Glade, or about another drug overdose down in Delray, it is so easy to give up. It's so easy to just say, you know what, I'm done. I'm taking a sabbatical. I just need a rest from all of this, as though really we can carve out a place of safety in the midst of life and its ongoing storms. But we can't. Only one of us gets to go on sabbatical. But in all seriousness, you know what I mean. We can't give up because it is not our nature to give up. Just look at us. It's amazing, Sanford was saying, maybe we should tell everyone we're going on sabbatical more often. Fill the church on a November morning, it's great. But just look at all of us, right? We are members of the body of Christ. You and I are the living, breathing presence of God in this world. Our job is to build a community of love, a nation of love, a world of love. And we can't wait for somebody else to do it. You and I have been set apart by Christ to do the work that he's given us to do. We are the saints, and we are just ordinary people who love God and who have chosen to follow Jesus Christ to the end of the age. And on this annual Feast of All Saints, we pause, just briefly, to remember not only our sainthood, but those saints in our lives who have shown us how Christ's vision of love can actually become a reality. Those saints who remind us that life has always been hard and stormy and full of worries, plagues and pestilence, despots and kings, warring nations and warring religions. There have always been earthquakes and fires and murder and deceit and wickedness. You name the list. Every generation endures travail and such pain and such suffering. But saints are not afraid in the face of peril. Saints stand up to fear and they face it head on. Saints never give up because they know God never gives up on them. Saints stand at the grave of Lazarus and they expect Jesus to bring calm to the storm and light into the dark and life out of death. Saints never measure the value of life by success or achievement, by fashion or beauty, by skin color or language, or by nation or creed. Saints measure the quality of life by love. How well are we doing at love? By the quality of those words that we share with one another, the actions we take in service to one another. You don't have to get lost in church history and worry about St. Mark or Peter, Paul, Mary, those other saints for inspiration. The sainthood we celebrate today, it's pretty mundane. It's the life lived in the trenches. It's where you and I spend our days and our nights. It's where the littlest things we say and do, they matter the most. I told the children during Friday's school Eucharist, I'm just going to put a quick plug in for the school Eucharist. If you've not been to a school Eucharist at 8:25 on a Friday morning, you need to come to one. It's an amazing experience. Your heart will be softened, and you will believe in the future much stronger. But anyways, I was telling them a riveting story, holding their rapt attention, about growing up when I was a child and visiting my grandmother's home in Jefferson, Wisconsin. It's a little kind of farming community and a county seat. It sits between Milwaukee and Madison, a little north of Chicago. And I grew up Lutheran, she belonged to St. Mark's Lutheran Church in Jefferson. And of course, when we spent a Saturday night with Grandma, we were going to church on Sunday. And she sat about the fourth or fifth pew, right? You know, she had her pew, her seat. And we would sit always on the aisle so we could kind of see better. And Grandma would sit there. And the pastor in the church would always, at announcement time, he would kind of give an update as to the health of the community, where everybody was in hospitals or nursing facilities, that kind of thing. And my grandma would immediately reach into her purse and she would pull out a pen and she would start writing down the names of who the pastor was referring to. And I told the children, I always remember the little pendant heads that hung off of her, like this bracelet she wore, and the heads were all of her grandchildren, you know, with our birth dates. And as she wrote, I would hear the jingling of her bracelet. Why are you doing this? I would whisper over to her. So I remember who to visit this week. It's a pretty small thing. 53 years later, her grandson still remembers. I remember her compassion, her care, her faith, her love. That's what we're doing this morning. We're remembering all those saints in your life who make you better than you might be able to become without them. Your grandma's here. Maybe your high school football coach, camp counselor, your husband, your dad, your mom, your son, your daughter, boss, a mentor, maybe a priest. They've all joined that great multitude that no one can count. That multitude from every nation and race, from all tribes and peoples and languages, the souls of the righteous, who suffer no more as God wipes away every tear from their eyes, holding them in the embrace of his own heart. If you're quiet, you can hear them in the silence of your heart. The tinkling of that bracelet. The whisper of a voice. Their words of anger over injustice. Since All Saints' Day a year ago, funeral services have been held in St. Mark's Church for 22 saints who have died in the past year and risen again. This morning, we're going to take a bit of time to remember those folks. We'll give them a candle coming off this great Paschal candle. This is the great symbol of our sainthood, Christ shining in the dark. It's a light in this frightened world that reminds us that there is nothing that can take us from love. As you know, baptismal candle was lit, when each of these persons was made a saint in his or her baptism. When Madison Johnson is baptized here in a few minutes, she's going to receive her little candle so that she is marked as Christ's own forever, and she's given her sainthood. Light reminds us that fear has no place in the life of a saint, and that Christ is with us always, and in him there is no darkness at all. So I'm going to invite family members and friends to stand and receive your loved ones' candles. Most of you should all have gotten calls and know that we're going to be doing this. So when Sanford will walk a candle out to you, when we're kind of done with your family, you can sit down and the next family can stand. Ian Roger Burns was born on October 5th of 1997 and died on October 21st of 2017. The son of Rick and Monique and the brother of Caitlin and Devin, Ian was also a son of St. Mark's. A fixture in many of our lives here, Ian was a regular in worship, youth group, Boy Scouts, but his first St. Mark's love was to sing in the choir, which he and his sisters joined when they were in 4th grade. A budding actor, an Eagle Scout, a fearless singer, a brainiac, a jokester, a friend to many. Ian was a member of the National Honor Society at Suncoast High School before enrolling at the University of Florida, where he was double majoring in mechanical engineering and music. A tragic fall from an apartment balcony took Ian's life. His legacy lives in the memories of those who loved him. And there were so many who loved Ian Burns. One of his high school friends continues to visit with me as he tries to find solace and meaning for his broken heart and over Ian's death. I assure him that he is not alone, that we all continue to grieve Ian's death. But I also assure him that God will wipe away every tear from our eyes as God brings new life from Ian's death. Harold John Kolb Jr. was born on February 1st of 1934, and he died on November 2nd of 2017 at the age of 82. Raised an only child up in Bayside and Flushing, New York, Hal graduated from Auburn University with a degree in industrial design. And although he never actually played golf over at Auburn, Hal's first love was golf, so after school he became the head pro at the Nassau Country Club. His quiet confidence gave others confidence as he patiently helped hundreds and hundreds learn how to swing a club, master the chip shot, and sink a putt. He was married to Fran for 56 years and the proud father of 2 daughters, Laura, who lives here in northern Palm Beach County, and Paula, who lives with her family in North Carolina. A faithful Lutheran for many years, Hal started attending St. Mark's with Fran when they retired here back in the late 90s. Always faithful, many of you will remember Hal the last couple of years at the 10 o'clock, always walking he had so much trouble walking slowly up the middle of this aisle to get up here to this communion rail. His determination to make it to church mirrors his determination in life. You could count on Hal Kolb to be there for you, which is a gift his family and friends will never forget. Richard Grimley was born on October 25th of 1928 and died on Sunday, November 12th of 2017. Born and raised in Jersey City, New Jersey, Dick received his bachelor's degree from Hamilton College. A true gentleman, Dick retired as vice president of consumer products and sales with Cannon Mills in New York City, where he spent most of his career. Strong and active Episcopalian his whole life, Dick served in the vestry for 12 years at Christ Church in Ridgeway, New Jersey, and of course he was a longtime lay reader at St. Mark's, where he and his beloved wife of 62 years, Joan, attended. The proud dad of Margaret and Ann and David, John, and Joyce. Dick was also the proud grandfather of 11 grandchildren. A truly gifted golfer, Dick's first love was his family. He has always found time to coach their sports teams or to cheer them on in their academic achievements. Many of us here remember Dick well reading those lessons from this pulpit always on Christmas Eve, dressed in this really beautiful red sport coat and a Christmas tie. Phyllis E Clark was born in Indianapolis, and she died on November 20th of 2017. A lifelong Episcopalian, Phyllis was so proud of her older brother, James, who became an Episcopal priest and eventually elected bishop. She was also proud of her other brother, Richard, who landed as a paratrooper in Normandy. But the love of her life, her sugar, was the man she met and married more than 60 years ago, Dick Clark. Soon after Dick finished his law degree at Indiana University, the Clarks moved to North Palm Beach, where Dick established his law practice, while Phyllis gave birth to their daughter, Kathy. A woman with great style, Phyllis dressed like $1,000,000. But that never got in the way of her enthusiasm for adventure, serving as Dick's faithful co-pilot as the Clarks flew all over the country in their Piper and Bonanza airplanes. Regulars at the 8 o'clock Eucharist. I will always remember Phyllis Clark greeting me on Sundays in the back. "You are the best looking priest we've ever had." And then she looks at Dick and she said, "Isn't he good looking, Dick?" To which I've never actually heard your response. Jane Barnett was born on June 6th of 1918 and moved to Palm Beach County as a young girl from Washington Square, Ohio. A lifelong Episcopalian, Jane graduated from Palm Beach Junior College before marrying William Barnett in 1941. After he retired with a career in the Navy, Jane and Bill opened Barnett's Shooting Preserve here in Palm Beach Gardens. Believe it or not, it's hard to imagine. There used to be 4,500 acres of land off of Hood Road just west of the Turnpike where the preserve was held. And it was a popular attraction in Palm Beach County for especially kind of the rich and the famous. So Bing Crosby and Burt Reynolds and Florida Governor Claude Kirk were all regulars at the preserve. But what most of us remember at St. Mark's about Jane is her amazingly strong faith in Christ and her commitment to this parish. She was a founding member of the St. Mark's thrift shop. If it wasn't for Jane, it wouldn't exist. And one of the early members of the Anglican Women's Order of Prayer that we have here called the Daughters of the King. She was also active in the Cursillo movement, and Jane also had a great sense of humor. Many faithful Christians, some of you might find this hard to believe, come in and they tell us exactly how they want their funerals to run. And we have files for many of you in the church office that tell you what hymns they want to sing and what they do or don't want done in their services. And Jane had a whole folder replete of instructions. And she said, "If it is decided that someone will give a homily," and then in parentheses, she writes, "short and sweet, to tell them that I love the Lord and love to serve the church in his name," parentheses, please remember to instruct someone to turn on the mic. As most of my friends are old and deaf. And no one untrained projects their voice loud enough from the pulpit. Jane died in December, just short of 100 years. And she survived her loving and caretaking daughter, Alex, several grandchildren, and many of her great St. Mark's friends who are still shining as lights in the dark. John Brainy came into this world on April 14th of 1927, and he died to this world on January 28 at 91. Born in northern England in a coal mining town, John served in the Royal Navy during World War II before moving to London, where he met the love of his life, Helen. By 1975, the Brainy's family had grown to 4 children, little Claire, who died when she was young, Sally, Stephen, Joanne. Joanne and John and Helen at that point made the decision to move to the United States, where John worked a bit with a family business in commercial real estate development here in northern Palm Beach County. An avid reader, history buff, John enjoyed playing golf and tennis in his senior years, but loved English, soccer, rugby, and cricket when he was much younger. But it was his children, it was his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, and his dear wife, who died 3 years ago, that brought John his deepest joy. A family disciplinarian, John ensured that his children knew that a solid handshake is the mark of a solid person, that education is more than a university degree, that following your dreams is worth the risk, that sacrifice is its own reward, and that giving to others is a legacy of love that lives forever. Faith Lambrides Kaminsky was born on July 7th of 1929 and died on January 31st. For those who knew Faith, they would agree that her parents chose the best name for someone whose faith was second to none. The daughter of a Baptist preacher, Faith started at Baylor University when she was only 16, and she ended up graduating from the University of Maryland, where she fell in love with Artie, a staunch Roman Catholic. And they fell in love, of course, where many love blossoms in university life, in the library. Faith found her way into the Episcopal Church through the Sisters of the Holy Nativity, who helped her nurture a strong faith in Christ that guided her throughout her life. When the Kaminskys moved to Palm Beach Gardens, Faith joined St. Mark's, and along with Jane Barnett and Marion and Don McDonald and others, they helped form again the thrift shop. They served on the old outreach committee. They joined the Daughters of the King. She was active in Girl Scouts. Faith and Artie also became famous in town for their leadership at the Senior Center, where they planned and led more than 60 trips around the world. A tree is planted near the rec center on Burns Road, in fact, in honor of her contributions to the life of Palm Beach Gardens. Faith leaves behind her children, Diane Tice and Ron, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, but not after filling their hearts with many, many wonderful memories of a faith-filled life. John Francis Sanuki was born on January 24th of 1949, and he died on February 12th after a wonderful life of service to others, from being a security guard to serving our nation in the armed services. To his loving husband, Bruce, Jack was caring and always willing to work to make life better. His years of work at Old Port Cove and his love of making people's lives better was appreciated by countless residents. He was the unsung hero without whom many of us would have no idea what to do. Lest we forget his love for cruising. Whether it was the Caribbean or Alaska, Jack loved the adventure and freedom that the open seas brought, as well as the sheer thrill of the engineering magnificence of those ships. He'll be remembered with great love and admiration. Barbara Ann Ashe was born on March 25th of 1929 and died on March 21st of 2018 after a prolonged illness. A close and dear friend to our own Dr. Jean Rodman, Barb was raised in Montreal where she married her husband Richard. She was the proud mom of 2 sons, Michael, who died of AIDS a number of years ago, and Tim, who currently lives in Ohio with his wife Kim and Barb's only grandson Nicholas. The Ashes moved from Pleasantville, New York to Miami, where Richard owned an advertising firm in the late 90s, moved to Palm Beach Gardens several years later. A lover of sports, she was an avid skier and tennis player when she was young and a great golfer as she grew older. After Richard died, Barb also became great friends with many folks living out at PGA, especially the women who played bridge. A lifelong Episcopalian, she volunteered for many years at St. John's Church in Pleasantville, but was never a regular worshiper at St. Mark's. Maybe a Christmas and Easter, a CEO. Her family and friends miss her quick wit, her no-nonsense attitude, and her abiding friendship. Catherine Ann Jacobs, 79, was born on July 6th of 38 and died on April 19th after a short battle with brain cancer. A longtime resident of the Gardens, Kathy was born in St. Joseph, Michigan. She married Joseph Leto, and together they raised 5 children. In her free time, Kathy enjoyed gardening, going to Bible studies, and water aerobics. She was an accomplished painter. She spent her Sunday afternoons during football season cheering on her beloved Pittsburgh Steelers. Retired as a property manager at the Capri on Singer Island in 2015. Even though she had left St. Mark's a number of years ago, she returned just shortly before her diagnosis with this brain cancer. And she was so happy to be back here and found great solace in the arms of the Peace Chapel, where her many friends surrounded her on her last service here with those prayers of healing as she became ill. Patricia Ruth Rozelle was born on June 29th of 28 and died on April 30th. Born and raised in West Palm Beach, Patricia moved to Pennsylvania after college to start a family. She lived up there for 27 years, where she raised her daughter Denise and her son Douglas. Pat was known for her excellent cooking and her care of the house. Everyone enjoyed her sense of humor, but her jovial spirit was not to be mistaken for weakness. She was the disciplinarian of the family, and was a devoted and loyal wife, mother, and grandmother. She is missed by her daughter Denise and son-in-law Bob Yeagers, both active members at St. Mark's, and by her grandchildren Heidi, Robbie, and Katie. She was predeceased by her son Douglas and her 18-year-old son. Her faith, however, gave her peace, and she now rests with them in the arms of Jesus. Frances Taya Kolb was born on June 9th of 1930 and died on July 6th, only 7 months after her beloved Hal died. She's remembered by her daughters, Laura and Philip, and her family as a woman of amazing resilience. No matter what sort of circumstance came up, she would rise again to meet the new day. Often such endurance is built out of experience. And for Fran, that was certainly true. Her mother died when she was just a child. But out of that tragedy grew a woman who began to embrace the challenges of life, each time realizing that God had given her enough strength to overcome those odds. Having a family, Fran worked with Hal for a while in their golf shop, but eventually devoted her full attention to the girls. Family vacations from New York brought them down here to Florida, where Hal loved to play golf. She's loved and missed very much, but her family, as difficult as this can be, her family finds peace knowing that your mom and your dad, your grandma and your grandpa are together again, with Jesus holding them close to his